Hey, everybody, or a couple of people, what's going on? Uh, I'm live for a little while. What I'm going to be doing today is just talking for a few minutes, and then I'm going to go to the slides and I'm going to go to the worksheet that you guys have assigned that's due. So, me going through the slides will hopefully, if you follow along with me, there's no screen sharing on YouTube Live. I didn't want to do Google Meets because I've chosen to do this during class time because you can get me via chat right here, but it's not going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 people in a chat room in a Google Hangout or a Zoom, and it's just going to be too loud and it's going to be unfocused. I'll do the Zooms and stuff at night so we can say hi and we can goof around. But for now, how I'm going to do this is I'm assuming, that's why I'm doing this at the end of class, I'm assuming that you have already looked at the materials that I posted at 7:30. You have seen the slides. You have also opened the work for today, which is the supply and demand activity. And you have read those directions and you've watched the 6-minute video because that came with a 6-minute video. And if you didn't watch that, you're not going to have time to watch that during this because I'm already assuming you've looked at the slides and you've looked at the worksheet and you've read the directions and watched that video. But I will go through the slides, breaking down in my own words real quick, and then I will go through some of the worksheet. So if you look at that worksheet, you'll see that it's a little bit. A lot of kids will be like, "Oh, I don't get it. What does that mean?" Well, that's why I'm here. I'm going to tell you how it works. All right. I won't be looking at my live stream really. I'll be going back and forth on the tab because I'm going to be looking through the slides and the worksheet while I talk. So if you say something, I will come back to this tab eventually and see that you've said something. So what you have open, you definitely have open this stream. You have open on a tab the slides that I gave you today, and you have open today the activity for supply and demand, which I think is labeled like AG Explorer Tractor Supply. So that's the supply and demand worksheet. So you have those two other tabs open because that's what I'm going to be going through throughout this 15 minutes or so. This is recorded. So if you need to go back and look at it later, you just click on it on the classroom and you'll be all right. Also with friends, there's some people that have an NJIT class right now and can't sign on. That's fine. You're not, I'm doing these, so I'm live and you can talk to me if you need to. But if you don't need to, you could watch me now and go along with me now and ask questions, or you can look at this stream later. All right. So we are going to begin. I am going to begin. What's up, Ryan? I am going to begin. So I'm flipping off of this tab. I'm going to the slides. So you should have your slides open. Again, I can't screen share on YouTube Live. So you're just going to have to follow along with me. The first slide obviously tells us the name of it, land and water use. This is lesson 2, how do different types of agriculture compare to each other? So we're going to look at 2 different types of agriculture, or 2 main types. And agriculture is growing food, right? Hopefully everybody knows that, farming and growing food. So I'm just skipping through slides 2 and slides 3 and slides 4 and slides 5 and 6 because that's all review from before. So you can look at that on your own. And then we get to the new stuff. So slide 7 has the objective, and it says after this lesson you should be able to compare and contrast the different types of agriculture and how they use land and water. There is a time-lapse corn growth video that I linked you to on YouTube. It's actually a very cool video. I love time-lapse vids, so you can check that out on your own. Now we go to slide 8. Slide 8 is an interesting fact. It talks about how different types of agriculture compare to each other. So this fact that worldwide, more than 99.7% of human food comes from the land. So even though we're covered by a lot of water and a lot of sea creatures, 99.7% of our food comes from the land. So that's very, very important that agriculture is taken seriously, and agriculture is always evolving and finding new ways to grow and produce enough food to feed all of us because it's pretty much the entire food supply. And so that's what slide 8 says. Slide 9 talks about how do different types of agriculture compare to each other. So there are many different types of agriculture, and it all depends on a lot of different factors, and that's kind of what this is saying. So One of them is that each acre of tillable land is not equally productive. What that means is for every piece of land that's farmable, tillable means you can rip it up and plant seeds. It's not equally productive. And that all depends on a couple of factors. What you're growing, it depends on the nutrients in the soil. So all of the tillable land, farmable land, isn't equally productive. So that's one difference. Irrigation practices, fertilizers, and erosion problems. That contributes to just how much land is needed in order to produce food. So, if you're in an area where it's always raining, if you're in an area where water is readily available, you don't have to worry about irrigation. So, what you have to do if you're not in an area like that is you have to pipe this water in, or you have to find a river or a water source and cut a channel or a trough, right? That will bring the water to your farm. That requires land. You can't just cut that through anybody's land. So if you need to irrigate, you need to have more land available, things like that. Erosion problems, depending on where you farm, you may have erosion problems. So that may require more land to produce enough food, right? And I'll let you read through the other two, the diets and also China and Canada and stuff like that. So that's slide 9. We are moving on to slide 10. So how do different types of agriculture compare to one another? So cropping systems vary among farms depending on the available resources, right? And constraints. So cropping systems, that just sort of means farming. Available resources and constraints, what does that mean? Available resources could be, is there enough land? Is there enough equipment? Depending on where you're farming and where you are, you may not have enough resources to do that. Geography, climate of the farm, right? Where the farm is, what the weather's like, that's going to dictate what you're growing. Government policy. There's a lot of government policies out there that restrict certain things from being grown in certain places. So that could be a problem. And then there's other issues too, economic and political pressures. Sometimes if if soybeans, for instance, are being sold at a very high price, being exported at a very high profit, sometimes you'll get political pressure from government agencies to grow soybeans. So if you want to grow corn or you want to grow wheat on your farm, sometimes you'll get this political pressure to grow soybean because they know that that's a more lucrative crop that they can export and things like that. So there's a whole bunch of different things. Also the philosophy and culture of the farmer. Sometimes the farmer wants a small farm. Sometimes he wants a big farm. Sometimes he wants to grow organic and not use fertilizer, right? So there's a bunch of different things that will dictate what you grow, how you grow it, how much you grow, how successful you are at it. Moving on to slide 11. How do different types of agriculture compare to each other? So the first type of agriculture that we're talking about here is something called monoculture. Mono, means one. Monoculture is growing a single crop over a really wide area for a lot of years. So you're growing the same thing in the same place year after year. Okay. That is what a lot of people do. You drive through the country and you see cornfields or you see wheat fields, and these farmers are constantly producing that because that's what people are buying and that's how they're making their money and feeding their families. Problem with that is what we talked about last week, biodiversity. If you're growing all of the same species of corn in the same dirt year after year in the same spot, and all of a sudden a pest or a disease is introduced to that crop is all genetically similar. It's all going to get destroyed. So now you go from having this huge area of bountiful food and profit, and one little bug or one little disease knocks everything out. So that's not good because that's not a biodiverse way to farm. So that's what they're saying about monocultures that can lead to a lot of issues. Slide 12. The longer a field is cropped, means farmed. The longer a field is farmed, the greater the loss of soil the loss of soil as far as organic matter. What that means is, what this whole slide basically means, as I'm reading it, is that the more you plant in dirt, the more nutrients are going to be used up in that dirt. That dirt is going to get used up. The nutrients, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, that's all going to disappear, right? The soil will get acidic. and the stuff that you've been growing in there isn't going to grow anymore because it needs nutrients. Now, that's why people add fertilizers. That's why they add nitrogen and they add phosphorus. And if that's done correctly in a responsible way, then you don't then you can extend how long you crop a field. But a lot of the times you don't know the amounts in the soil. You don't know how much you have to add. You add too much, it sinks into the water source. And eventually that becomes a problem, like we said last week, with eutrophication and all that other stuff. So yeah, the longer field is cropped, the greater the problems set in with the dirt not being nutrient rich or nutrient dense, and then stuff isn't going to grow very well. So what do they do to, on slide 13, what do they do to sort of mitigate that or try to make that better? One of the things they do in a monoculture is they will do shifting cultivation. It's called shifting cultivation. Cultivation is how they is when they grow their stuff on a large plot of land, and they do that for a couple years, and then they take their stuff and they start growing it on another section of their land, and they abandoned that original section. So what they're doing is they're using the dirt in one spot and they're growing everything they can, and then they're hopping over and they're leaving that dirt alone and they're growing everything they can here. While they're growing everything they can here, the dirt that they abandoned is becoming more nutrient dense because nothing's using it up. So that soil sort of recycles itself. So that's kind of cool. So they'll shift cultivation, which means they just sort of hop around. All right. There's another term for that, which you'll see in a few minutes. So that's slide 13. Slide 14 is when they get into something called polyculture. Polyculture, many, right? So polyculture is when you're growing multiple crops in the same space. So what that does is that increases biodiversity of your farm. So if something comes along and kills the corn, hell, you're still growing soybeans and you're still growing something else, right? Hi, Amanda. I just saw you there. I'm going back and forth to the tab. I'm on the tabs for the slides right now. So if you weren't with me in the beginning, that's why I'm not really looking at myself do this, and you shouldn't even really be looking at me either. You should just be clicking on the slides and following along. So 14, slide 14, like I said, increases biodiversity. So it's a better way to do it if it can be done. There's reasons why it can't be done, but there are other reasons. Now, slide 15 and 16 are examples of polyculture. And if you see in the speaker notes, I want you to go and look for diagrams of those and paste them. So examples of polyculture includes crop rotation, which is kind of like that shifting thing I just talked about. Crop rotation is when you grow corn on this dirt, and then next year you grow soybeans on that dirt, and then you grow wheat on that dirt. You change the crops. You don't change the area, but you change the crop. And what that does is corn uses this kind of nutrients, but soybeans uses a different kind of nutrient, and wheat uses a different kind of nutrient. So it's a way to extend that dirt. If you're growing the same thing, those nutrients are going to disappear. But if you're growing different things, the nutrients disappear in a smaller fashion because every other crop is using a different amount of those nutrients. So crop rotation makes a lot of sense. Then there's something called multi-cropping and intercropping. I'll let you guys check out. Hold on. Coffee. And then companion planting, alley cropping, and beneficial weeds. So I'll let you look at that stuff. Be careful when you Google beneficial weed. Anyway, not even kidding. It comes up. But all right. And then we're on slide 17. The slide 17 I've already talked about. Slide 17 is the diversity of crops, right? So diversifying what you're growing makes sense. It makes sense because you are ensuring that you're going to come out with something. If you have to sell it, if you have to feed your family, right? That's the way that works. And then one of these things is an example in China. So just because it's a different, you don't necessarily need to grow a different crop as long as it's a different species or genetic makeup. So for instance, China, Asian countries grow a lot of rice because it's the perfect climate to grow rice, and you don't need a lot of area to grow rice. They do it on the sides of mountains and stuff. It's very cool if you ever look at rice paddy fields, the way they grow rice. But in China, they grow a whole bunch of different kinds of rice, right? So there's long grain and there's this kind. You guys know there's a million kinds of rice. So they'll grow different kinds of rice. That's a form of multi-cropping or poly agriculture because the diseases and the pests that will kill this long grain rice may not affect the other types of rice as well. So just because one type of rice gets killed off or gets destroyed doesn't necessarily mean another strain will. So it's like having strains of things, which I'm sure you guys understand. So that's sort of what slide 17 says. That's it. Slide 18 is just saying to see the handout, right? So this is what I want to get to, and hopefully you're still at least with me, or watching the video later on, you're still paying attention, because this is where you have to do work. So this is the you do part, right? You are doing this, you are figuring this out. But I know that some of this, especially the right side, I am looking at the supply and demand worksheet right now. So that had whatever it was called, AG Explorer Tractor Supply. I gave it to you in your materials. So you should have that open, that tab open, and you should be looking at it with me right now. So first thing it says, watch the video. The video, if you watch, is some guy talking about milk, talking about supply and demand with milk, and what happens when there's too much milk and no one wants it. What happens wants milk like now, and there's not enough supply. So what happens to the prices? What happens to the demand and the supply? And there's a whole bunch of different things. It's a 6-minute video. He goes through it using milk as an example, which is a good example. In this little worksheet, we're doing it as we're using dog food as the example. All right. So the first 5 questions on the left-hand side are just fill in the blanks. 3, 4, and 5 should be very easy and self-explanatory. If you looked through the video, the first half of the video sort of talks about questions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The second half of the video talks about the right side of this worksheet. So staying on the left side of it, question 3, 4, and 5, I'm going to leave alone because that's pretty self-explanatory. Question 1 and question 2, you have to decide which one is the definition of law, and which one is the definition of law of supply, and which one is the definition of law of demand. All right. So you're going to have to, I'm going to leave that to you guys and see which one. So number 1 and number 2 are law of supply and law of demand, but I'm not going to tell you in which order. I want you to try to figure that out. Okay. What happened? What happened?
Nothing.
Sorry, something's going on over there. Did you stab yourself with a pencil?
No, we're fine.
I think my son just stabbed himself with a pencil.
I did it.
Oh, my wife stabbed my son with a pencil, but it was an accident apparently. Anyway, back to whatever's going on here. This is a tough thing. Hi, Letitia. Anyway, all right, so you're on the right side of that, and this is the side that I wanted to concentrate on, because this is the side that it's funny. Yesterday, I did this with my third and fourth period class, and I was getting messages at night saying, "I don't understand the worksheet. I don't understand the supply shifters and the demand shifters. I don't get it. I don't get it." And I was like, "Did you watch my video? Because I'm literally going to give you a bunch of these answers right now." And they're like, "Yeah, we watched your video. I'm like, "No, you didn't." So if they're not watching the vid, they're going to be confused. So hopefully you watch along with this, because I am going to give you answers. So it's, a good incentive to watch. So the supply shifters, the stuff on the right, what they're saying, and this is the second half of the video, the 6-minute video you should watch. So the second half of it, he talks about what can shift supply, what can change. So shifters mean like changers, okay? It's variables that can shift to change the supply. Does it increase supply or decrease supply? And then below that, the demand shifters, what changes or what variables can change the demand for the product, okay? So we're talking about dog food. When we look at supply shifters, what variables might change? So now you're thinking, okay, I'm the guy who makes the dog food. I have a company that manufactures and makes dog food. That's what the supply is. So, for instance, they give you an example for question 1, price of resources. So in order to make my dog food, in order to produce this dog food, I have to use ingredients, right? I have to use chicken, I have to use gravy, I have to use whatever the heck's in dog food. If those resources get expensive, right, because the price of chicken changes. So if all of a sudden the price of chicken increases and it's costing twice as much to buy chicken as it did last month, well, I got to look at that as a business owner, and I have to say, okay, the price of chicken has increased. I use chicken in my dog food. So what I have to do is I have to chill out, and I can't spend that much. I have to decrease my supply, right? Because I can't afford to keep supplying the same amount. So if I have a warehouse full of 500 bags and all of a sudden the price of chicken goes up, well, guess what? I'm going to run my warehouse down a little bit, and I'm going to say, all right, I'm just going to keep 100 bags in the warehouse. They're always trying to balance money and making sure they have enough supply for their customers, but it gets tighter when the money gets tighter. For number two, number of manufacturers, right? So the number of manufacturers, if I'm making dog food and also the number of manufacturers in my area or that supply their food to PetSmart, say, increases, well, that's a problem for me. If I was the only guy at the pet shop down the street selling dog food, well, I know I'm going to sell a buttload of it, right? So my supply, I would keep a lot of supply because I know I'm getting rid of it. But if all of a sudden 5 other manufacturers start selling in that store, I know that just as a matter of fact, that people are going to choose other things as well. So now I don't need to have so much of a supply because I'm not selling as much. So the number of manufacturers makes a big difference. If the number of manufacturers go up and increases, then my supply would decrease, right? That would make business sense. Technology is one of those things where I'm going to use me as an example. Let me click over to the live stream, make sure everything's okay. Yeah, all right. So for technology, I get my dog food, literally, I get my dog food delivered to me every month, like through a subscribe, on Amazon. I subscribe to it and they deliver a 40-pound of dog food and I put it in my big container and I feed my dog all month, right? 2 or 3 years ago, that didn't happen. 2 or 3 years ago, you went to the store, you went to PetSmart, you didn't order it online. There was very few places you could do that, and it was probably not cost effective like it is on Amazon. So technology changes, and that affects the supply. Again, if I'm selling down the street to a pet store and all of a sudden I'm not online and I'm not selling, and now all of a sudden all these options come. I used to buy it from PetSmart. PetSmart is losing my business, or Walmart is losing my business because I can just sit home now and click add it to the cart and have it sent every month without me thinking about it for the same price. So technology affects, if technology increases and technology evolves, then the supply that you're going to hold as a manufacturer would go down, because unless you get on board, right? If you get on board with technology, you say, heck, I'm going online too. I'm going to have a subscription too. Then all of a sudden that might increase your supply because now you got people all over the world buying your dog food, not just people in this area that are walking into that pet store. So depending on how you look at it, it can go either way. Taxes and subsidies, market expectations, I'm going to let you go through those on your own. But if we go to demand shifters on the bottom right, demand shifters, what variables can change demand? Now you're looking at consumer. So you're no longer the person making the dog food. You're the person buying the dog food. So the first one is tastes, right? And preferences. Your dog food's got to taste good, right? Your dog has to like it. If your dog is not eating the dog food, you're not going to buy it again. So you are only the demand for the dog food that tastes better or whatever. And there's preferences too here. So the dog food that tastes better, the dog food that has better ingredients in it, maybe less chemicals, that would be in the preference. The dog food that a celebrity endorses, I don't know why, but I think like Rachel Ray, that cook, I think she endorses the dog food that I get. Now that wasn't a reason why I chose it. I chose it because it was a good price on Amazon. But they, people will buy dog food. I don't know if you guys just caught my wife on the stream there. She just peeked in and said, are you live? Anyway, so what was I saying? My wife, preferences. So sometimes celebrities will endorse dog food. Sometimes celebrities will, you can think outside of dog food too. Sometimes celebrities will buy sometimes what's his name? P. Diddy has like a vodka, right? So people will go and they will buy that vodka, not because it's a superior vodka, because P. Diddy said it was good, right? So there's preferences and tastes that affect demand. Number of consumers. How many people are buying that product, that dog food? So in my town, I have this town where it's super, 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 super dog friendly. I mean, almost to a point where it's creeptastic. Like every year we have this thing called Dog Days of Summer, and out in front of all the stores on Main Street, they have artists sculpt like pictures of sculptures of dogs and stuff, and they auction them off for a good cause. They auction them off to like for dog charities and stuff. So we're a really dog heavy town. That means there's a lot of people in this town with dogs. There's a lot of consumers. That's going to change demand, right? That's going to increase demand for dog food. But if you're in an area where it's mostly townhomes, or if you live in a really big city, there's not going to be as many dogs there. So that means that there's not going to be as many consumers of dog food. So the demand for dog food is going to go down in that area, right? So that's pretty obvious, I think. Price of related goods, and that's number 3. And the example says a substitute good for dry dog kibble is raw dog food. Complements are kibble storage containers and scoops. Okay. So related goods. If there's and it's kind of funny because the Tupperware container that I keep my dog food in, it was on sale. And I said, hey, we should pick this up because we don't have one and we should get it. Well, that's a big container. So I bought that big container. And what did I do? I bought more food because it could store longer in that container. So that will drive the price of demand too. Not so much, but a little bit. Income is a huge one. I'm not going to buy, you can go buy dog food from $5 a bag to $40. So depending on the income of the area is going to drive demand of a certain kind of dog food. Everybody would love to give their dogs the best dog food there is, but there's not, maybe you don't have the money to do that. So I go right in the middle. Dog food's okay, but it's just a dog, right? He likes everything. And then market expectations, I'm going to let you take a shot at that one. All right. That's all I really got. I just wanted to go through some stuff and give you guys some answers and get this recorded because I know, there's only 5 or 6 or 7 of you popping on here. Some of you are at NJIT. A lot of people aren't really into the whole video thing. But keep signing on every day. That is so important. Keep doing the work. The way the schedule works now, it's pretty cool because I'm giving you work only every other day. So, from now, that worksheet, which I gave you most of the answers to anyway, that worksheet you can work on today and turn it in if you get it finished. But, if something happens and you don't get it finished today, we're not going to see each other tomorrow. So you don't have to worry about me giving you more work until Thursday. So I think that's kind of cool. I definitely want to Zoom. I'm going to Zoom maybe tonight. My son keeps asking me if we're going to go live. So I might go live tonight just so I can, this has to be structured and serious. But I like to goof around too. And I like to say hi to you guys. And I like to hear you guys yelling and screaming. So I am going to go now because it's about 27 minutes and I have to get ready for my 6th period class. But anyway, I will talk to you soon. You guys are awesome. Thanks for signing on. Do the work, turn it in. Shouldn't take too long. Private message me if you have any issues and check the stream later because I'm either going to post a video or I'll talk about some sort of live session that we might have tonight if you're bored because I'm getting bored. Sitting at this desk, getting bored. But hopefully it's all good. It will stop soon. I mean, we got 30 more days, so you better find a hobby. Because Netflix just ain't doing it anymore. I don't know. Maybe do yoga or I don't even know at this point. Become a chef. Peace out, homies. I'll see you guys soon. Look for the Zoom because I want to hear you guys talk and chat and have fun. I'll see you.